Hello and welcome to LSU Women's Basketball Tournament Update. I'm Patrick B. I'm joined here by Scott Rabalais, and we're talking about game day. We've got LSU women taking on Hawaii to start the NCAA tournament to 4:30, and it's we'll see. LSU comes in as a heavy favorite in this game, but Scott, what are your kind of your takeaways? What can you kind of tell us about this matchup?
Well, it's a pretty much a David and Goliath kind of matchup. I think LSU is favored by around 30 points. Tigers 28-2, played in obviously one of the best conferences in the country. Still, although they wound up with the number 3 seed, they were number 3 in the net, which is the main metric the NCAA uses to help seed the tournament. Hawaii was third in the Big West, and they've overcome a lot of injuries, and they were able to grind out 3 straight wins and win the Big West tournament in Nevada to get here. So they're a scrappy team with some height. They've got some tall players inside. On their starting 5, Caitlin Spiller goes 6'3", and Amani Perez goes 6'4". So that's interesting, but. Overall, this is certainly a game LSU should win if they play well. And I think the Tigers, after that frustrating loss to Tennessee in the SEC tournament semifinal when they blew a 17-point lead and lost by 2, which probably cost them a number 2 seed in the tournament, I think they're highly motivated to come out and make a good showing and take any drama out of this game potentially with Hawaii and move on to the second round.
What's different about this LSU team, say, compared to a year ago? They struggled in this setting, losing in the second round to Ohio State. What makes you think the result can be a little bit different for this year's team?
I think it's a couple of things. First of all, with Angel Reese, certainly, who has earned first-team All-American honors this week with a double-double in all but 2 of LSU's 30 games this year. Only player in the country in the top 5 in scoring and rebounding. And LaDasia Williams, who's their graduate transfer forward from Missouri. They've got much more consistent scoring in the front court. I mean, last year they had some good players with Trazi and with a couple of others, but it was kind of hit and miss. And certainly they're more quality and more consistent quality in the front court. And they're healthier. Last year, I think LSU probably would have advanced to the Sweet 16 had Alexis Morris been healthy. She suffered a knee injury late in the season, missed a couple of games, played in the NCAA tournament, but only scored a total of 11 points in LSU's 2 NCAA tournament games. And LSU struggled to beat Jackson State, the SWAC champion last year, and then they lost by 15 to Ohio State in the second round. So I think that's the big difference. They're healthy now. They are rested. Obviously, you had, unlike a lot of teams, they had a week's break between the SEC tournament, a week off. Now the NCAA tournament, a chance to kind of get their focus, get their batteries recharged. I think you'd have to say they were dragging a little bit late in the season as the year wore on, trying to get to the finish line. But now it's a second win, and I think they're going to prove themselves worthy of that number 3, being a number 3 seed and get to the Sweet 16 out of Baton Rouge this time.
Do you see an Ohio State and Baton Rouge this year when you look at the 3 other teams?
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to look at the other game. It's very compelling. I mean, I don't want to touch on it too much. Reed Darcy's going to be on. He's covering the game, but to mention it, it's very similar to last year. You have a Big Ten team coming in Michigan, who is their experience. They've played a lot together. They've got size, battle tested in a very tough conference in the Big Ten. You got teams like Indiana and Iowa right at the top of the Big Ten, who are and Ohio State as well, who are all teams that could make runs in the NCAA tournament. And then UNLV, of course, has got a great record. I mean, 31-2. Only 2 teams, South Carolina and one other team, have more wins in the women's tournament this year. So it's got to be a little deja vu for LSU, especially if Michigan wins that early game today, for them to look across and say, we've got to beat another solid veteran Big Ten team. That's the one thing that this LSU team doesn't have in abundance. They have players with experience, players who've played in NCAA tournaments before, but not all together. And I think that's a thing that they would have to overcome, especially against a Michigan.
All right, Scott, thank you. You'll be at the PMAC later today. Covered it's at 4:30. LSU taking on Hawaii. That game will be on ESPN2. And thanks, Scott. He'll be back with us next week. As long as the LSU women are still winning, we'll be still doing this update. So thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Patrick.
And here we bring in Reed Darcy. You'll be covering that Michigan UNLV game, kind of leading into this game. What have you learned about these two squads, and what do you kind of expect in that game?
Well, Patrick, I think the main thing I learned, we had media availability yesterday. We talked to a few of the players from each team and both their coaches, and I think the main takeaway is that UNLV has a player that's pretty similar to Angel Reese. Her name is Desiree Young. She's 6'3" post player, and she has a lot of similarities to Angel Reese, and that teams double team and triple team her frequently. So for LSU fans, if you're watching that game, and you can see how Michigan tries to guard her and tries to defend her, and say Michigan beats UNLV today, then maybe that can give LSU and LSU fans a clue for how they might defend Angel Reese. I believe there's only two players in the country who are averaging over 18 points, over 11 or 12 rebounds, I think, and 2 assists, and it's Angel Reese and it's Desiree Young, and they're both in Baton Rouge about to play today.
Yeah. Between these two teams, I mean, you're looking, like Scott said, you're talking a UNLV team that won 31 games, a UNLV Michigan team that's 22-9, plays in a tough conference. Are both of these teams a threat to LSU, or either of them a threat? How do you see things playing out in the second round as long as LSU advances as expected? I
think for LSU, I think Michigan is a much greater threat, but I think UNLV, I think people are sort of underestimating how they match up against Michigan, because if you look at some of the perceptions around the team, I think there's this incorrect narrative that UNLV they got to 30 plus wins because their schedule was soft or their conference was soft. Well, if you look at the RPI, which is a good metric that tracks strength of schedule, Michigan, I believe, is ranked. Michigan is ranked 36. UNLV is ranked 29th. So UNLV is a real solid team. I think Michigan, though, they just match up so much better than LSU because they've got so much size and length. Their shortest guard is 5'11", and LSU, between Alexis Morris, Flau'jae Johnson, and Jasmine Carson. Jasmine Carson and Flau'jae Johnson are each 5'10", so they got a lot of size advantages there, and I think that could cause LSU lots of trouble.
Yeah, just on paper and everything we've kind of talked about, do you see Michigan as a considerable favor in this game, or has UNLV got a decent shot?
I think it's close. I think it's a lot closer than the seeding may indicate. Like I said, UNLV's got a pretty good shot, but Michigan is the better team. They're more experienced. They're more skilled. They're a lot bigger too. They have a really large size advantage over UNLV. So UNLV, they'll give them a shot, but I think Michigan should be favored here, and that'll set up a very interesting matchup against LSU on Sunday.
How have you seen the LSU women kind of respond from the Tennessee loss? Just kind of the body language, the response. How do you see how the way this team has responded out throughout the season? How do you see them come out here game one of the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I think Scott said it well. I think they've got a chip on their shoulder now. I think they're ready to prove that the Tennessee game, it wasn't really indicative of who they are as a team. I think they'll try to come out. They'll try to take care of Hawaii pretty quickly, and they'll try to make that game decided pretty early, because Kim Mulkey is always talking about the need to separate from teams and put them away early. By the time you get to the third quarter at least. So I think they'll take care of Hawaii pretty quickly. And then on top of that, we'll see whoever they face against Michigan and UNLV. I think that'll be a good standard to sort of compare them to where they were last year at this time, because Michigan and Ohio State are pretty similar teams.
Okay, thanks, Reed. You'll be out there at Michigan UNLV. That game tips off at 2 p.m. on ESPNU. Again, we'll be back here next week on Monday. As long as those LSU women keep winning, we'll be providing this update 3 days a week. So thanks for joining us, and we'll be there at PMAC with all the coverage between Reed and Scott. Thank you.
So thank you, Patrick.